Hey guys, listen up.
This is the SEC Insider Hit, powered by Miss Kelly Furniture, Mississippi's number one sleep store.
Man, do we need to change out the music? Good gravy. All right, we'll tackle that in May. I got to focus on the NFL draft right now. Tom Luginbill coming up next. Jason Campbell played here in Mississippi and Auburn and in the NFL. Jason Campbell, former NFL Auburn QB, will join us at 9:30. He's now the Auburn color analyst. And we're looking forward. We've never had Jason on the show, and we're looking forward to having him on the show. Yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to be great.
Is your first question going to be like, Jason, do you drive a Cadillac? Get it? Because Cadillac.
Taylorsville, Mississippi. That was terrible. Taylorsville, Mississippi is where Jason played football. This is how bad Jackie Sherrill wanted him. Jason's older brother was a starting middle linebacker for Sherrill and Jolie Dunn. And Jason's senior year, they had a Taylorsville game at Davis Wade. I went.
That's crazy.
I was in, maybe I was out. Yeah, I was out of grad school. Anyways, point is, I was on the sideline for it, and that was the big deal. And then eventually Auburn got him. Tommy Tuberville stole him from Jackie Sherrill. So there you go. Maybe we'll ask him how that recruiting war played out between Sherrill and Tuberville. Campbell went on to go to Auburn and have a fantastic career. In 2004, they went undefeated. Luginbill said, call him again. Sorry, he was on the phone. Lugs Mania will be on here in the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line in just a second. Tom Luginbill coming up next. And then Jason Campbell from Taylorsville to Auburn to the NFL at 9:30. All of our guests join us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. I want to say good morning. Welcome in. Exciting week with the NFL draft. You know, it's always cool when we have our guys that are going to be selected in the NFL draft. And Emmanuel Forbes will hear his name called by Friday, cornerback out of Mississippi State. He was nothing but a playmaker. Had to start day one because Moorhead left Leach virtually nothing. And that Mullen to Moorhead transition was pretty gross. And so Emmanuel Forbes started from day one in the SEC at 165, 70 pounds, ball hawk, playmaker. And his name will be called, we think, in the second round. He's from Grenada, Mississippi. And then Jonathan Mingo is flying up the board. He had a sporadic career, kind of a solid plus career at Ole Miss. But it's a bunch of little dudes in the draft. And so, according to Dane Brugler, among others, theathletic.com, Dane thinks that Mingo will go in the third round. He may even go in the second because he's the biggest dude as far as the wide receivers. I will see where Flowers goes from Boston College, but he's another one of the little dudes. We welcome in our friend, national college football analyst with ESPN. He is Tom Luginbill on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. How you doing, bud?
I'm great, man. How are you doing?
Good, dude. You know, we're going to have Jason Campbell on at 9:30.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. You know, Jason's from Taylorsville, Mississippi. You know this. He signed with Tuberville, went to Auburn. In 2004, they went undefeated with Cadillac and Ronnie and Jason and that defense. And then he went on to play in the NFL. Now, I was crushed as a I guess I was in my 20s because this came down to a Jackie Sherrill, Tommy Tuberville recruiting battle, Luke's. And at that time, Jason Campbell had an older brother on the Mississippi State football team that was a multi-year starter at linebacker for Jolie Dunn. And man, MSU fans thought, you know, they were going to get him. But Tubbs comes in, he signs with Auburn. The rest is history. You know, now he's the Auburn color analyst. Did you know that, Luke?
Yeah, I did know that for radio, right?
Yeah.
Yep, I did know that, yep.
You remember watching him play at Auburn?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Al Borges was the offensive coordinator of those teams. You had the two running backs. You had the two receivers whose names were hard to pronounce. Do you remember those guys?
I do remember them, but I can't remember their names.
I can't either. I know. I just remember I was always getting them mixed up.
Yeah. Yeah. And Ronnie and Cat, I always thought, so the national narrative, and you may think this too, but I'll never forget this. I just started doing sports talk radio in 2003, Luke's, and the national narrative that next year when Auburn went undefeated was, because Southern Cal was on a roll, was that Southern Cal, even though they didn't get to play each other, was that that Southern Cal would blow them out. I don't think that's true, and here's why. Because Auburn would have been able to run the football, and they had defense, and they could have milked. Now, Southern Cal may have won, but there were people that were like, it'd be 45-7. And I don't agree that it would if they'd have matched up, Luke's.
I don't either. I think they would have pulled away maybe late, just because of the skill offensively that was on that SC team. But no, I agree with you. I don't think that would have happened.
They gave up 11 points a game that year. Auburn did. And that was Tuberville's side of the ball at Miami and Texas A&M before he became a head coach.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
So that dude, he turned that Ole Miss program. Ole Miss was on massive probation. That was when I was in college, when Tuberville took, technically Billy Brewers, but Joey Dunn did an interim year. And Tuberville comes in, and Ole Miss has been just hammered on NCAA infractions. And Tuberville flipped that program in literally overnight, and the rest is history. But, so we're going to have Campbell on, and then I was texting back and forth with Ronnie Brown, and he's coming on to share his draft experience. How about this? Ronnie Brown's now a stockbroker in Atlanta, and he does stuff for Auburn too. Did you know that?
I didn't know that. I thought he might have made enough money to not have to do anything.
Yeah. He's in the Buckhead office in Atlanta. So I just found that out this week. We had Fred Smoot on a couple of days ago, and he shared his draft experience, Luke. I want to get your thoughts. He was drafted in the second round, right before the Washington Redskins, now the Commanders, right before the Redskins drafted him. Jerry Jones called him and said, "We're drafting you if you're there." And 10 minutes later, the Redskins Commanders drafted him. He had rented out a sports bar here in Jackson in 2001. This is funny. And I asked Smoot when he got his 7-figure check, I said, was it direct deposit back then? And he went, no, they wrote me a check. I had to take it home and take a picture of it because we didn't have cameras on our phone. How about that?
Can you imagine?
No. $1.2 million check. He took it home in North Virginia, wherever he was, condo apartment at that time, and takes a picture of it and then goes and puts it in the bank. And he said, that's when I realized what taxes were all about.
Yeah. Get out and vote.
That's right. And so I thought that was good. And he talked about the private plane coming to get him. And then 3, we talked about family members asking for money. And Smoot has, he kept a ton of his money, which I love it when players do that. And he just said, man, once you say yes once, 30 days later, they forget that you gave them money 30 days ago. I bet you've heard that story.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, you ever heard the phrase, money makes you more of what you already are?
Yeah.
Right? And that can be good and bad. But you start to get these hanger-oners and these runners and these third parties and these guys that are quote-unquote your friends, and they're not your friends, right? And next thing you know, you should be independently wealthy, and instead you are having to go get a job in the real world when you had actually made enough money to never have to work another day in your life. That's sad. It really is.
Tom Luginbill on the Out of Bounds Show. Let's talk guys that will hear their name called the next 3 days. I want to start with Jonathan Mingo. Mingo looks amazing in uniform. But he had an up and down career and never really got rolling. He had some nice moments, but this is a small receiver draft that's going to play in his favor. So, how does Jonathan Mingo project for you in the NFL?
Well, it's interesting because he played everywhere at Ole Miss. I mean, he's lined up in the backfield. He was a slot. He played kind of as an H-back. He's one of those guys that I think is at his best when he's going up and attacking the ball in a crowd when contested. Now, you referenced the fact that as a group of receivers in this year's pool, it's a relatively undersized group. I mean, shoot, the guy out of North Carolina who's a really, really good player, and I'm losing track of his name right now. He comes in at like 5'8.5", but he's a great route runner, great player. So I don't really know what I would do with this guy, to be honest with you. I almost feel like he could play wide receiver, but could he play running back? Like, could he where would you put him? And I think that's a legitimate question to ask, because I don't know if you're going to feel like he's just going to continually just outrun everybody. I think he's pretty good vertically. I really do. But I also feel like he's good vertically, and if it's contested, he's going to come down with the ball. But is he just going to actually take the top off the defense? Because his size makes him so unique. He doesn't look like your prototypical wide receiver.
There's only two of them out of the top wide receivers that are over 200 pounds. So that's where Luginbill's going. Mingo is a big...
Him and Quentin Johnston.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Mingo's a big dude, physical. There will be a spot for him, wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4, but Lugs is making a great point. They've moved guys to running back before, and it has worked in this league. Including Patterson. My gosh, he's been playing running back for the Falcons and the Vikings for damn near a decade. So
I know it.
Is it Cordell? Yeah, Cordell Patterson.
Patterson from Tennessee. Yeah.
God, that guy's a heck of a player. So, all right, Emmanuel Forbes, cornerback out of Mississippi State. He started day one. He's light, but he's long, and he knows how to go up and get the football. And he was a big time playmaker. They say he's going in the second round, Lugs. What do you think we could see from Emmanuel Forbes over a 5 to 8 year career in the NFL?
I'd like to see if he can gain some weight, get stronger, get bigger. I think that's one of the things that probably, I'm not saying it worries NFL guys, but they look at that. You're playing on the perimeter, and if you're having to get physical and you're having to come up and run support, do you worry about durability? I don't think there are really any concerns about him as a coverage player. Like you said, he's tall, weighed in just under 6'1", but only 165 pounds. And so he's got a ways to go from a strength perspective, but from a coverage perspective, I mean, you look, and we talk about this all the time at the collegiate level, and it ends up becoming true at the NFL level. You're not seeing 5'9" corners anymore, right? You're not seeing the Darrell Greens anymore. Everybody now that's either has a draftable grade, okay, or is somebody that could be a viable candidate as a corner is 5'11" and above. So let's look at it. Keely Ringo, 6'1" and 3/4, okay? Julius Brents, who might sneak into the first round out of Kansas State, 6'2" and 3/4, 198 pounds. As a corner, right? These are corners. Tyreek Stevenson at Miami, 6 3/8, 198 pounds. And so you go all the way up to the top, and now you start looking at Deontay Banks, 6 1/8, 197 pounds. If you're not meeting a certain measurable standard from a height perspective, you're not getting drafted in the first 2 to 3 rounds. It's just not happening. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's where Emmanuel Forbes, it's not so much the weight, but the height really, really helps him out.
Absolutely. Tom, and he proved it, on Saturdays in the toughest league. So time and time again, and he's not with one of the top recruiters. Out of bounds, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Zach Evans is on Good Morning Football right now, so we'll ask Tom Luginbill, who's very familiar with Zach, both at TCU and at Ole Miss. Look, we know he's got talent. He ran into a couple of hiccups. he also looked good at Ole Miss at times, and then he got a little nagging injury, and Judkins took over. Okay, but he can ball, he can play. How do you project him in the NFL?
Well, first of all, I would say that I'm really, really proud of him because coming out of high school, if you recall, he was almost everybody's unanimous number 1 overall player. And for us, for a while, he was too. And he had some real issues on his high school team and had just not conducted himself well. And he was one of those guys that you would have said, this guy's not going to make it, and it's going to have nothing to do with talent, right? And what did he do? He ends up proving everybody wrong. He became a great student at TCU, did everything that was asked of him, never got into trouble, all of those sorts of things, and played really, really well for them. But he does have an injury background, and I think that's the thing, particularly at running back, that is concerning, is durability when you consider the pounding and the physical the physical strength that it takes to avoid getting injured, right? To be able to be there every single week. And he's had a hard time doing that. Now, from a talent perspective, he's about as good as you're going to find. I mean, he can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's got great top end speed. Like, it's not a question of talent, but as we've talked about, and as NFL teams have researched, he does have a bit of a history, right? And he has not been able to stay healthy during the course of his college career, which is not, when you're going into draft prep stuff, that's going to hurt you at the running back position. Maybe more so than any position in the draft.
Yeah, fair enough. Tom Luginbill, ESPN, on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Lugs, ESPN's Todd McShay, who's a good friend of yours, and Daniel Jeremiah with the NFL Network did a podcast over the weekend together. And they talked about the quarterbacks that we've debated with you. You're not high on this class. I'm not. But they were asked about Anthony Richardson, and they were asked to give a percentage on, whether he would be an NFL starter, and they put it at 40%. Does that sound about right for you?
So you're going to put it at 40%, but we're going to draft him in the top 10 overall pick.
I know, it doesn't make.
What are we doing? I'm sorry. I get so weary of very physically talented players that don't produce. I mean, the bottom line is, I don't care. You can show me however many plays you want to show me from the Utah game. And then I can show you 40 other plays at some other point during the season where you're looking at this guy going, what in the hell is he doing? And Will Levis is the same way.
They put Levis at 50%, by the way. Both of them agreed on both of them. 40% for Anthony Richardson as an NFL starter and 50% on Levis. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so you're looking at that, and you say, well, why is that? Well, low completion percentage, high turnover rate, injured often. That's Will Levis right there, right? Anthony Richardson, marquee athlete, poor completion percentage, right? Completely up and down from a consistency standpoint. And I don't think you can play that way and be consistently productive enough to win games in the National Football League. I mean, you look at Trey Lance. Trey Lance played way more productive football than Anthony Richardson did, and he's struggling.
Yes, he is.
Struggling, okay? And you look at the guy that was at Liberty. That's with the Tennessee Titans right now, right?
Malik Willis.
Malik Willis, all right? He's struggling to get on the field.
They've moved off him.
And now you're going to take a guy that completed 53% of his passes and bank your franchise on him? And so, like, just one last thing on this. I'm not saying that they shouldn't be drafted or shouldn't be drafted highly. But if that's the thought process, and you think there's a 40% chance they become a starter, are we saying good starter, or are we just saying starter? Like, if that's what you're saying, then why would you take them in the top 10?
Well, okay, and it was funny what Daniel Jeremiah. So they're kind of thinking through this on the podcast, right? And Daniel Jeremiah with the NFL Network's kind of thinking through it. He goes, And now that I think, he said, we keep talking about developing Anthony Richardson in the NFL, and he said, I'm thinking through it. He said, there's really only 6 to 8 franchises that I can think of coaching and front office that can develop a quarterback in the NFL right now. And some of those already have quarterbacks.
Yeah. I know. Oh, my goodness. It's going to be fascinating to watch. Like, it really, you watch. Let me tell you what's going to happen. A Jake Haener out of Fresno State or a Max Duggan.
Hendon Hooker.
Maybe Hendon Hooker, although guys from that offense have not made that transition well to the National Football League. But, yeah, I mean, he could be a guy. But, like, there's going to be 1 or 2, maybe 3 guys, okay, that will either get drafted or sign a free agent contract that will last longer than one, if not both, of those 2 guys.
Yeah, that could happen.
It's inevitable.
Tom Luginbill on the Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. All right, I want to switch gears here. Alabama went and grabbed a QB in the transfer portal, Tyler Buckner. He was at Notre Dame, which is where Tommy Rees was. Evidently,
is that official now?
What now?
Is that official?
Oh no, I'm sorry. He's visiting, but I
he's visiting. Yeah,
yeah. I was on Tuscaloosa Sports Talk Radio yesterday. They believe that it's going to happen, and so obviously Tommy Rees was the OC at Notre Dame, and Saban sounded real frustrated with Milroe and Simpson coming out of A-Day and the 15 practices. So my question to you is, do you have anything on Tyler Buckner from Notre Dame, maybe going to Alabama, like who he is, what kind of player?
Oh, yeah. So he was an Under Armour All-American for us who did not play his senior season in high school because of COVID, and we actually didn't have the game that year because of COVID. So he's kind of behind in his development. Got to Notre Dame, obviously very, very talented, and I think sat his first year behind Jack Cohn, if I'm not mistaken, and then last year became. Or was it 2 years ago? I might be losing track of the years, but he ended up becoming their starter, and then obviously got hurt, and we know the rest of Notre Dame's season. But he's one of those guys that's extremely gifted. I've gotten the sense, watching him at least early, that he's a guy that when he makes a mistake, it seems to linger with him. And I don't know if that's a maturity thing, if that's a development thing, but it's definitely something I think he's got to get past. But he can make the throws. He's a really good runner. The question then has to be, because listen, obviously Sam Hartman's going to be the guy at Notre Dame. So the question has to be, if I'm going to go into the transfer portal and I'm going to go somewhere else, I got to find a place where I'm going to start, right? Well, if there's one coach in America that's not promising you that, it's Nick Saban.
Right.
So you're going to have to compete with the other 2 guys. So there's not going to be any guarantees.
Right. Of course, they feel like, according to Ryan Fowler in Tuscaloosa, who's got his finger on the pulse pretty well, they feel like one of the 2 that you and I are referencing will head out in the next couple of days because of this.
Absolutely.
I agree with that. With Milroe or Simpson. We'll dive into that more later. Hey, enjoy the draft. I think this is the first time you're not on the road in a while. But
that's right, yeah.
Have a great weekend and enjoy the lake, and we'll talk next week.
Sounds good, buddy. See ya.
Tom Luginbill, National College Football Analyst with ESPN. He is on the Out of Bounds Show, and it is brought to you by Mud Bugs, the best crawfish in Mississippi. 2 locations in Rankin County. Their shrimp is amazing. Crawfish, Mud Bugs, cold beer. Mud Bugs opens today through Sunday. Jason Campbell at 9:30.